months ago, I was parked in front of M's Coffee Company. It's a little coffee shop downtown. Just sitting in my car, I was about to enjoy that nice brew I got, and there's a minivan that came around. And they were going to park right in front of me, and they cut the corner too sharp, and they hit the front of my car, and so then the police had to be called. It's a process to figure all that out. And fortunately, they had insurance. We had insurance. Everything was taken care of. A few months, the cars were all repaired. If you've ever had the problem of trying to fill out a report to explain how this accident occurred, you've got to be creative. There's only so much room on those forms to be able to explain what happened. And I want to share a few ways that people have tried to describe the incident that they were involved in their car accident. Somebody said this: an invisible car came out of nowhere, struck my car, and vanished. I guess it's plausible. Someone else said this: the telephone pole, they just said telephone, was approaching fast. I attempted to swerve out of its path when it struck my front end. That's a problem. The next one: the pedestrian had no idea which direction to run, so I ran over him. It's rough. Moving on, I don't know if it's the same insurance claim or not, but the guy was all over the road. I had to swerve several times before hitting him. And finally, someone tried to explain this. I pulled away from the side of the road, glanced at my mother-in-law, and headed over the embankment. Many people are on a failure freeway, it seems. We all have had moments where they're not our best moment. It wasn't our shining moment of our life. But when we fail, sometimes we try to blame this on somebody else. Maybe we try to cover up our failures. We try to speed up just to get away from it, or we just give up, not even going to try to fix anything. It's too much to handle, too hard to deal with. Today, we're going to have to admit something. We have all had colossal failures, big mistakes, things that if ever came to light, if someone learned about my failure, man, you wouldn't even want to be around me. Well, today we're going to look at one of the biggest failures in the Bible. There's a man by the name of Peter who was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. Actually, within those 12 disciples, he was considered what's known as one of the three in the inner circle of Jesus. Someone who walked with Jesus, was there for an amazing various miracles that he witnessed and got to be a part of. He was someone whose mouth ran a lot faster than his brain. Sometimes he said such incredible things. Other times he was saying things that made no sense at all. And you wonder, man, are you ever going to learn anything? Well, we recognize his great moments of success, but also his regrettable moments of failure. And let me bring you up to speed to where Peter's story coincides with the Palm Sunday story that we're in right now. Jesus arrived in Jerusalem. He came on what we now know as Palm Sunday. It was a huge crowd that was honoring the Lord, and they were celebrating. The chief priests, though, they were not celebrating because they saw what the people were doing. They were gravitating toward Jesus. And in fact, the words that they were saying as Jesus was coming into town could be misinterpreted as a political statement. They were saying Hosanna, which means save us, which could be interpreted, save us from the Romans. And so the chief priests, they were very much against Christ. In fact, they were trying to find ways that Jesus could be taken off the board. They came to the place of recognizing he needs to be killed. Later during that Holy Week, Jesus gathered with his disciples in an upper room, and they experienced what we now call the Last Supper. It was Passover, and it was an ancient Jewish meal that they would celebrate, rejoicing that God brought the people out of Egypt, and now they were doing this as a memorial for God sending the Passover lamb. And Jesus celebrates this Passover meal with his disciples there in that upper room. In that upper room, Jesus predicts that very night, one of them would betray him. And they're all wondering, who could it be? Is it me, Lord? Is it me? Is it I? I'm going to do this. Everybody's wondering, who is it among them, the 12, the most committed ones, who would turn away from Christ? Peter, in that moment, he goes before God and says, if everyone else denies you, I would never deny you. And if you can follow along with me, I'll have the words from Luke chapter 22 on the screen. And this is what happened in that exchange. Jesus told Simon, that's Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. But he replied, Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death. Jesus answered, I tell you, Peter, before the rooster crows today, you will deny 3 times that you know me. Now, I believe when Peter said, I'm willing to go to prison for you, I'm willing to die for you, I believe he meant every word of that. He believed that. He loved the Lord. He knew who Christ was. And he was convinced in his own mind, even if everybody else falls away, I am never going to fall away. I will never deny you. But yeah, within a few hours of making that statement, we have one of Peter's most regrettable moments of failure. Before we get too hard on Peter, I think it's important to recognize that his story is a lot like our story. And there are some truths that we really need to pull from this moment, because we've all had our Peter moment. A moment where we've said, oh, I will never. And then we did. The truth is, you may feel strong, but failure may be closer than you think. You know, think about those times, maybe just some household tasks that you've done for years. Maybe you have to change the light bulb in the bathroom, or maybe it's springtime and so you have to clean. Why do we have to dust the top of the ceiling fan? Does anybody ever see that? But yet, for some reason, we think that has to get done, right? And it's this time of year that we're getting all those winter blankets, we're folding them up, and whose bright idea it was to store them at the top shelf of the closet? But that's where they go. And so in order to do that, we have to pull out that little step stool, right? Because then you can reach the light bulb or the ceiling fans or reach the top shelf. And you have used that step stool for a long time, years, up and down, up and down. If you had a nickel every time you got that thing out, you'd have a lot of nickels. Boy, doesn't it happen, though, that you get that stool out, you throw that down, you're carrying the blankets and your dust cloth and a light bulb. Why you're doing it all at the same time, I don't know. But you try to go up and down that step stool that you've been up and down hundreds of times, and you miss a step. It's not because you're being careless. It might be because you are just a little overconfident. I'm not going to fall. I got this. Oh, no problem. I've done this lots of times. I can handle this. Sometimes overconfidence doesn't make us stronger. It actually makes us vulnerable. I think I got this. I can handle this. I've done this plenty of times before. I'll never deny you. Even if everybody else does, I won't. That's one of the ways that we end up falling, is we can become overconfident. I think Peter had some of this in him. He said in Matthew, who tells similar details of this same account, he told Jesus, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And that's when Jesus actually warns Peter that even before the rooster wakes up in the morning, you're going to deny me 3 different times. It's going to happen. The moment that you think you're beyond falling, you are closer to falling than what you realize. After their meal, they gathered together in a garden. And it was a time to pray together, and Jesus is praying, and the disciples are sleeping. By the way, do you ever fall asleep when you're praying? That's a biblical thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying it's a biblical thing, all right? It does happen. Sometimes I know couples that they like to pray together at night, and so they, husband and wife, they get into bed together and they're praying together. You always want to be the first one to pray in that situation, okay? Because once she's praying, then of course, you can just kind of, you just fall right asleep. It's kind of a good thing. Well, they're there in the garden and praying, sleeping, and waiting, and then suddenly everything happens, seems like all at once. One of the very disciples of Jesus, Judas Iscariot, is leading a mob into the garden. And there they confront Jesus. We have the mob and we have Jesus and his disciples. A fight actually breaks out there, and an ear is cut off, and Jesus puts the ear back on a man, and Jesus said, okay, stop, this is enough. And then he allows them to arrest him, and he's taken into custody. Let me pick up some of the details here, again, a little bit further in the book of Luke. Then seizing him, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. You may want to underline that because we're going to be coming back to that. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. After Jesus is arrested, Peter is following at a distance. Not just was he physically following at a distance, but he was becoming distant emotionally. And I believe he was becoming distant spiritually with Jesus. That distance that we allow between ourselves and God, that distance allows space where fear, shame, and peer pressure can take over. And Peter, he didn't run far from Jesus, but he drifted just far enough to allow space where fear and shame and that peer pressure had a place to grow. And for us, so many times, our spiritual failure doesn't happen in a moment, but it happens as a drifting. We rarely fall all at once. We drift first. And if you look back at your own spiritual failures, I bet you can find that there's moments that it wasn't just that, yes, you can point at a moment, this is where I fell off, but boy, there was just a drifting closer and closer and closer to that drift, or that cliff, wasn't there? We drift slowly. And we create space between our heart and God's heart. The distance makes us vulnerable to falling. There might be a distance in your life between you and God. If you notice that those just normal spiritual habits are not so much of a habit anymore. The time of taking time to pray and communicate with God, to talk and to listen to the Lord. If that's not something that's happening just on a daily basis, an ongoing basis, that may be an indicator that there is some distance that's being created between your heart and His. It could be even just reading God's Word. If that's something that is not a normal practice in your life, that may be an indicator that there's distance that is being created, that you're allowing in your life. The distance may show up when maybe you avoid accountability. If you don't want to hear someone come to you and say, I'm concerned about you. I've noticed this about you in your life, and maybe you haven't seen this, but I'm concerned. And you don't want to hear what they're saying to you because they're getting too close to the truth. So I just drift away from that. Maybe there's mentors that you have in your life that suddenly you're not allowing them to see what's really going on. You're not being honest with them. Perhaps there's a group of people that you used to gather with on a regular basis to study God's Word, and suddenly I'm not so into that anymore. That could be an indicator of some real spiritual distance between your heart and God's heart. See, we take one step, and then another step, and then another step. Just the distance keeps growing, doesn't it? That's what happens in our spiritual life. We drift away one step at a time. We might be overconfident. Oh, I'll be there. I'll be there. Oh, you may be closer to a fall than you realize. Or that drifting but increasing distance between you and God. It could be another indicator you are close to a fall. You may feel strong, but failure is closer than you think. Peter demonstrated another common way that we end up falling. We fear the opinions of people more than we fear the opinion of God. I mean, Peter, he was warming himself by a fire. There's other people around, and he was trying to keep track of what God was doing, what was going on in Jesus and the trial and all of that. But there's that distance that was there. And then as he's gathering around this fire, there's a servant girl who says, "Oh, you were with him." And for some reason, Peter, he said, "No, I don't know him. I don't know who you're talking about." You know, it's not that he was denying Jesus before a soldier. Someone had some authority, but it was a servant girl who at that time, they had no authority. They didn't have a voice. They didn't really have any opinion. But even for someone like that, in that position, Peter's like, nope, I don't know them. I'm not associated with him. I have nothing to do with that man. You know, the same one who moments ago was so confident about his willingness to die for Jesus. Now he openly declares, I don't even know him. In your life, when people start to feel big, when their opinions become big, God becomes small. Let's keep reading in the Luke chapter 22. Drop down to verse 59. About an hour later, another asserted, certainly this fellow was with him, for he's a Galilean. Peter replied, man, I do not know what you're talking about. Just as he was speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him, before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testament, 4 books that talk about the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All 4 of them talk about Peter's denial. And it was that important. That's one of the reasons why I believe the Bible, because of the embarrassing testimony that is included in the Bible. If I was writing something about me, I probably wouldn't want to include a big failure like this. So it's one of the reasons why you can believe the Bible. However, it is only Luke's gospel that includes a very important detail about the denial that Peter had here on this day where Christ was arrested. Only Luke points out this detail. Verse 61 says, just as Peter was denying the Lord for the 3rd time, and the rooster crowed, it says only in Luke, the Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the words the Lord spoke. The Lord turned and looked straight at him. I bet that look hit Peter 1,000 different ways. Guys, have you ever gotten the look? She doesn't have to say anything. Oh, but that look says everything, doesn't it? It's a powerful, powerful way of communicating. And I just wonder, okay, what was that look saying? Some people might say, well, maybe it was a look like, I told you so. I told you. You didn't believe me. I don't think that's what Jesus was trying to convey. He wasn't trying to shame Peter. It might have been a look of anger. How could you? After all I've done for you, in this moment that I needed a friend, somebody I thought I could count on, and yet you're out there just like I said. I don't know. I don't think it was that. I don't think Jesus came to add more guilt. He came to set us free from that. I actually believe that when Peter denied Christ for the third time, and Jesus looked out that window and saw him out there, I believe it was a look of pure, holy love. See, you may run from Christ, but here's the thing. He is searching for you. He's taking the initiative to search for you. He sees you at your very worst. He sees you in those moments that you hope and pray to not become public. He knows precisely the moments that you have failed so big that if it ever became known, this would be not only embarrassing, this would be humiliating, this would be the most shameful moment of your life. Jesus sees you. He's searching for you. You have any people who follow Major League Baseball? You guys, baseball fans here? Not a soul. Seriously. You can raise your hand if you follow baseball. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a couple of you honest. The rest of you must be Cubs fans. So. Oh, well, I didn't think you cared. Okay, so suddenly, now you're all baseball fans. Okay, I get it now. There was a baseball player named Josh Hamilton, 5-time All-Star. And 2010, he led the Texas Rangers to the World Series. I mean, this guy, he was the league MVP in 2010. He was an incredible baseball player. Publicly, I mean, he had all the accolades, everybody's cheering for him, and they thought he was the greatest. That's what the public Josh Hamilton was. While he was having all that success, privately, this guy was falling apart. He was losing a battle to drug addiction. And he recognized, this is robbing me of my family. It's stealing my faith. It's pulling me away from God. It's going to take my career. It was awful. And as it was one night it was a terrible, again, another failure into drug addiction. That he recognized that he was sitting alone, and there's nobody else I can turn to. My family knows about this, but they're keeping it quiet. My teammates, some of them suspect this, but no one's actually confronted me on this. But I know that I am absolutely falling over and over again in this same pit. It was in that moment that he cried out to God, "Will you help me? God, I can't do this alone." He was humiliated, he was humbled, he was shamed. And he said this, he said, God was the only one who could change me. He didn't want God just to help me get over the hump, but he wanted God to change him. You know what that's called in that moment where you recognize, I am so humiliated, I'm so shamed, I'm so broken. There's only one person who can help me. That's what we call conviction. It is such a beautiful, beautiful gift that God gives. That moment that you realize you can't fix yourself, that you need the help of God. Conviction is not rejection. It is actually an invitation by God. He's inviting you to come back to him. Jesus is moving toward you, not away from you in your worst moments. This is precisely what a loving God would do. In fact, when we look at the cross here on Good Friday, we recognize what the Apostle Paul said, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And if you're sensing that conviction of God, and God is putting His finger upon areas of your life that you have failed, that's not Him rejecting you, that's Him inviting you. It's an invitation into grace and to be transformed by the loving power of God. In your worst moments, He's not walking away from you, He is walking toward you. And I wonder if you're sensing that now. Conviction is not God pushing you away, it's God pulling you home. Here's what the good news is. The moment of conviction is not the end of the story. It could have been for Peter, but it wasn't. For Peter, this wasn't the final chapter. Actually, this was a turning point in the story of his life. Because the same Jesus who looked at him in the courtyard went to the cross and gave his life for the sins of the world, including those of Peter that day in the courtyard. And that Christ rose again from the grave, and that He appeared to disciples and various times after the resurrection. And we'll be talking a lot more about the crucifixion this whole week, and I hope you're able to read through that on your own as well. But if we can fast forward just a moment, because in the time between Christ rising from the grave and Him ascending into heaven, the disciples, they decided, Peter said, you know what? I'm going fishing. And if you are someone who likes to fish, that's a biblical thing. I think you should. You want to be a biblical Christian, so you should fish. Well, Peter, I don't know how he was feeling in between those moments of his conviction and then Christ meeting with him. But as we look in Scripture, we see Peter wanting to go out and fish. They fished all night. They caught nothing. If you're out fishing and you catch nothing, that's a biblical thing. So don't complain about it. So you're about as good as the other ones. But while they had fished all night out on the Sea of Galilee, the sun was coming up, they saw someone out on the beach. And there was a campfire that person had, and they had some fish cooking over the fire. And the call came out, have you caught any fish? Don't you hate that when people ask that question? They already know the answer. You haven't caught anything. But Peter recognized it's the Lord. And so the disciples, they get back on the beach and they have this amazing breakfast together, and they're so grateful they can be back with Christ. And here's what happens next. I'm jumping over to the book of John. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. It was around a campfire in a courtyard at night when Peter had his worst failure. 3 different times he denied even knowing Christ. And then we come over to another campfire, maybe about a month later. The sun is just coming up. The risen Savior is there. He made a meal for his disciples. He invited Peter to come and sit down there beside him. Over here, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Denied, I don't know him. I don't know the man. I don't know the man. Over here, at this other campfire, we have the Lord asking him 3 different times, do you love me? Now, Jesus meets you at your point of failure. He calls us right where we are in this moment. It's the same setting, but oh, such a different outcome. Jesus will take you back to the place where you broke down, not to shame you, but to restore you. Near that fire, Jesus said, do you love me? He didn't say, why did you fail me? He didn't say, why can't you do better? No, he drills down to the very foundation of their relationship. And that foundation is indeed love. Peter's not making some bold promises or proclamations now. I think he's learning. Instead, he focuses not on looking good, just loving God. And if I love God, then everything else will pretty much take care of itself. As Jesus prepares Peter for the future, he gives him this purpose. He says, feed my sheep, or take care of my sheep, feed my lambs. It should be a special challenge for all of us this morning. We had so many parents come and make an incredible promise to God to raise their children to know and love and follow Jesus. And we as a church, we recognize we are called to support, encourage, and help, admonish the parents in that holy calling. As we see Jesus receiving this calling, he later becomes, as you read the rest of the story, he becomes an incredible leader in the life of the church and continues to bless us today, even in his failures. We learn a lot. Peter doesn't just receive forgiveness of God, he receives a commissioning from God. Maybe he thought his story ended back at this campfire. No, Jesus is saying, I'm writing the next story. And I'm inviting you to step into it with me, whatever the next chapter is. And Jesus does the very same today. If you feel like you have so failed in your walk with Christ, if you have blown it big time, if it just seems like, man, I don't even know where to start over again. I have failed so terribly. I want to encourage you. He meets you where you are. He sees you as you are. His plan is to restore you with His grace and to thrust you forward with a great purpose. Here's the bottom line for us today. You may feel strong, but failure is closer than you think. Maybe you need to ask yourself, where am I being overconfident? Am I allowing distance to be created in my walk with God? What am I going to do about that? In your failure, Christ is searching for you. If you sense that conviction, do not push away from that. Allow God to use that conviction to pull you to the place of forgiveness, of restoration. Realizing you cannot change your past. Oh, but Jesus, He can change the future. He can use even the failures of your past to prepare you for what He has for you in the future. Do not let Satan shame you and paralyze you. If you remember nothing else of everything that's happened this morning, I hope you remember this. Your failure doesn't have to be final. God has all the grace you need. He's in the business of restoring and of sending and empowering you to live the life He calls you to live.